do not represent those of Kentucky Wesleyan College, Stanley Reed, or the views of the organizations the panelists represent. In sum, this means that individual views are exactly that, the views of the individual speaking. Kentucky Wesleyan College is a Christian organization, and our cardinal values are honor, support, love, and integrity. We ask that all individuals conduct themselves in accordance with these values while they're engaged in activities associated with this institution. Your moderators tonight will be Braden Jennings, a freshman political science major and vice president of Stanley Reed. My name is Simon Hansen. I'm a political science major with a minor, I'm a psychology major with a minor in political science. And I'm also the president of Stanley Reed. On behalf of the Stanley Reed Political Science and Pre-Law Society and Kentucky Wesleyan College, thank you all for your attendance and please enjoy the forum. We will begin with a short biography of each of our panelists.
First, we'll start out with DJ Johnson. Stanley Dwayne Johnson is an Owensboro native and a graduate of Apollo High School and Western Kentucky University. He and his wife, the former Will Hoyt, also of Owensboro, have been married for 44 years. DJ is a former U.S. Army captain, a former small business owner and manager, a high school teacher, a Southern Baptist deacon, and an active member of the Bellevue Baptist Church. Additionally, DJ serves on the board of directors for both Mentor Kids Kentucky and Senior Community Center for Owensboro-Davis County. DJ is currently serving in his third term as a state representative for the 13th District, which includes parts of Davis County. He is co-chairman of the Public Pension Oversight Board and serves on the House Standing Committee for State Government, Apportionments and Revenues, Veterans, Military Affairs, and Public Protection, Energy and Natural Resources, and the Budget Subcommittee for the General Government. Next, we have Deputy Chief Winkler. Lieutenant Colonel J.D. Winkler is a long-life resident of Owensboro, Kentucky. Upon graduating high school, he joined the United States Army and served 5 years active duty, achieving the rank of sergeant. After leaving the Army, he began working for the Owensboro Police Department in July 2002. Lieutenant Colonel Winkler holds a bachelor's degree of science, and he got his degree here at Kentucky Wesleyan College. He also received a Master of Science degree from the University of the Cumberlands. He is a graduate from the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia. He is a graduate of the FBI National Academy, along with the Academy of Police Supervision at the Department of Criminal Justice Training in Richmond. We also have Dr. Don Stacy. Dr. Don Stacy is a board-certified radiation oncologist who practices in Hazard, Kentucky. He is a member of the Society of Cannabis Clinicians and Doctors for Cannabis Regulation. He is also an elected member of the Kentucky Medical Association Board of Trustees.
All right, next we have Daniel Saj. Daniel is a fourth-generation Kentuckian, an Army veteran, and lifelong union member. A father, a grandfather, and he has been a cannabis advocate since 1976. Kristen Wilcox is on the Team Kentucky Medical Cannabis Advisory Committee at the Kentucky Justice and Public Safety Cabinet. She is a co-founder and president of the Kentucky Moms for Medical Cannabis, the board of directors for Kentucky Normal, and a founder of Butler County Special Needs Advisory Alliance. She's also a Kentucky Colonel commissioned by Governor Andy Beshear. Julie Cantwell is an Owensboro native, co-founder and president of Kentucky Moms for Medical Cannabis, a board member for the Governor Beshear's Medical Cannabis Advisory Board, and the director at Hardin County Cannabis Education. She has been a Kentucky patient advocate and medical cannabis lobbyist for 9 years and was recently commissioned a Kentucky Colonel for her work on medical cannabis legislation and advocacy in the state. Her journey began with her need to help her epileptic son, who is now able to have safe access to medical cannabis. So join me in welcoming all of our panelists today, and thank you all again for being here. It's a great honor. So.
All right, so we are going to start with asking Dr. Don Stacy a few questions, if that's all right. So let me know when you're ready.
I have no idea what I'm doing with this microphone. Does this sound right? All right, excellent.
So our first question is vaporizing marijuana less dangerous than smoking it?
Yes, when you compare vaping to smoking anything, it's always safer. The idea really is if you're smoking, you're taking a product, you're heating it up to a certain temperature, smoke is created, and smoke always has a bunch of carcinogens in it. Whereas whenever you're vaping, essentially what you're doing is you're taking a liquid, you're heating it up and it becomes a vapor. So it's a very different product that you're inhaling. So that's why if you compare cigarette smoking or vaping nicotine, if you compare vaping cannabis or smoking, either way, just by definition, you're going to have less carcinogens within the system. Now, there is a much bigger difference for cigarette smoking. For cannabis, that's sort of we'd have to sort of, there's some, we really haven't sort of figured out sort of the details of how many cannabinoids, terpenes. There's a variety of products in cannabis. So it's a little bit more complicated, frankly, with cannabis. But just generically, my personal opinion is that definitely vaping, from a safety standpoint, the least possible carcinogens you're going to get if you vape compared to smoke.
All right, thank you. So given your work as a doctor, obviously you deal with cancer patients and just cancer in general. So do you think the passing of this bill will possibly affect the lives of cancer patients?
Oh, certainly. Because the issue is it's options for patients. I mean, I have plenty of patients, horrible cancers, horrible pain, who just frankly refuse to take the narcotics and say, I'm afraid I will become addicted. I'm afraid my grandson, who's an addict, is going to steal the pain medicine. And so they just refuse to take the pain medicine or fill their prescription, and then they suffer throughout treatment. So if we can have sort of other options, any options available for these particular patients. So yes, without question it will. Plus, we're not talking about just pain. We're talking about appetite, nausea, vomiting, anxiety. There's a whole lot of other sort of diagnosis, symptoms that go along with cancer that can also be helped with various cannabis products.
Thank you for that. It's widely known that not only in the state of Kentucky, but in the United States in general, that the opioid addiction is terrible. Do you think that the legalization of marijuana, in this case medical marijuana, will stifle the opioid addiction?
It will certainly help. The idea is that there is a substitution effect. When in jurisdictions that have legal cannabis of some sort, what happens is a certain number of people use the cannabis products rather than narcotics. And anytime you take a narcotic, there's always a chance of an overdose occurring. Cannabis, it's impossible to overdose. That's one of the beauties of cannabis. So certainly, with all the data we have, it certainly suggests that when cannabis is legal, you make it easy for people to use cannabis. Some people will and will not use narcotics and therefore will not overdose.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to move to Deputy Winkler. Sorry. There you go. So actually, I want to ask you this question as well regarding opioids. Given your career, do you think that this will help with the opioid pandemic?
Well, I come from the perspective during a pretty significant portion of my career. I spent working narcotics, both a detective and supervising the unit. As the doctor was saying, I do certainly think that it will have an impact. I don't know how great that's going to be. The reality of it is that and I mean we have, especially with the fentanyl problem that we're seeing in our line of work, there's individuals that specifically seek out those opioids. Now, I'm kind of in the same boat with some of the people the doctor was talking about. I'm not an individual that likes taking, whether I have a surgery or whatever, that prefers to take anything, because I've seen what opioids can do. Will it have an impact? Yes. Do I think it will have a significant impact? No. We're dealing with human nature, and as human beings, we all suffer from the same condition, and that is sometimes to be attracted to what's not good for us. So it will have a slight impact, but I don't think it'll be significant, sir.
with the passing of this bill. Given your time working in Owensboro, have you seen a decrease in arrests for marijuana?
Over the past several years, yes, pretty significantly, to be honest with you. When I've been at it here for coming up on 21 years. We have transitioned to marijuana as it should be, as a low level offense. The majority of times, it's just a matter of a citation when it's user level quantities. So the numbers over the years have dropped pretty significantly, sir.
Awesome. So we're going to move on to our advisory board, folks. Would y'all mind to give us a rundown of the conditions that were covered in this legislation? Oh, I forgot to mention, do silence your cell phones. It's all good, though. I forgive you. There you go.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Do you mind to give us a short rundown of the conditions that are covered in
Oh, okay.
Bill 47?
In the governor's order or the bill?
You can honestly start. We can start with the bill, but if the governor added anything else, we'd love to hear that too.
Okay, in the bill that was just passed, Senate Bill 47, we have cancer, epilepsy or intractable seizures, multiple sclerosis, severe and chronic pain, chronic nausea, and PTSD. The governor's he has 21 qualifying conditions. Do you want me to read those as well? It's a long list.
Not all of them. I think that's fine. But I mean, the pertinent ones, I think. Or how about this? Anything that's not currently covered that you think should be by either two pieces of legislation?
So when the governor's order came out, he came out with 21 qualifying conditions, and so the bill will be effective January 1st, 2025, and it only has 6 qualifying conditions. So I feel like a lot of people that are going to be able to get help under the governor's order are going to be cut off once the bill goes into effect. And can I say this
by all
real
means.
quick? So out in the lobby, we've got these little packets together. And the first page on the packet is the qualifying conditions according to the governor's order. And then underneath of it is Senate Bill 47's conditions. And then we also have a fast facts sheet that has facts about medical cannabis. And we encourage everyone to take that to your doctor and try to educate your doctor about medical cannabis. If they're not already, which I hear a lot of Owensboro doctors may not be. And on the third page is the medical diagnosis written certification. So you'll take this to your doctor and you'll get your qualifying condition written on paper, and the doctor won't be prescribing or recommending cannabis. It says nothing about cannabis on here. What it does is just qualifies, that just says that certifies that you have a qualifying condition that the governor mentioned. And if you'll take that to your doctor, you can, get that filled out, and then if you get pulled over, you can go to another state and get cannabis, and if you come back to Kentucky with it and you get pulled over with it or caught with it, as long as you have one of the qualifying conditions and have the receipt from the dispensary, original packaging, and no more than 8 ounces, which is quite a bit, then you should be okay, according to the governor's. Yeah, you should be eligible for the pre-pardon as long as you're within those. Do you want to tell about the law enforcement?
Yeah, thank you all for bringing all the extra information too. We really do appreciate it. Oh, no, not at all. No, that's like super pertinent. Everyone here wants to know. So, did you want to add anything else, Kristen?
Not to that question.
All right, yeah, no worries. So you kind of touched on this, but I said, how would y'all alter the current legislation? I mean, obviously the governor's executive order seems to be a little more extensive insofar as the conditions, but beyond adding extra conditions, is there anything else in particular that y'all think would be advisable for the betterment of the Commonwealth?
Absolutely. I feel like this piece of legislation that we just passed, while we're grateful and it's a step in the right direction, it absolutely falls short. There's several things we would like to add. Of those, the list of qualifying conditions, they should be added to, but more so, I believe that they should be taken out altogether. I believe that what a doctor believes is best for his patient shouldn't come from what a legislator decides that is a qualifying condition. A lot of the patients we see, we've traveled all over the state, met people from all walks of life, and we believe that some of the conditions that people have never heard of. So any list, no matter how comprehensive it is going to leave somebody out. So I believe strongly that we should just get rid of the qualifying conditions altogether and let a doctor do what he feels is best for his patient. I'd also like to see some workplace protections. Thank you. I'd also like to see some workplace protections and the absolute removal of THC drug testing. I want to see home grows. A lot of our patients who qualify for the use of medical cannabis it can be very expensive from a dispensary. And a lot of these people have mobility issues and are on fixed incomes. And if they believe that they can grow this plant at home and even tailor it to their own specific needs, they should have that freedom. And I'll continue to fight for that. Yeah.
Also, we have these postcards out front as well, and if you have a qualifying condition that is, or have a condition that is not one of the qualifying conditions, either in the executive order or on the bill, then we encourage you all to fill these postcards out and send them to your legislators. Send them to your senator and send them to your legislators and let them know that you need help and that you want your condition to be qualifying.
All right, yeah, thank you all very much for that. That was very informative. I now have a question that I will give to Mr. Sosh and Dr. Stacy as well. So how has medical cannabis aided in the treatment of PTSD for you personally, Mr. Sosh? And then you can talk, I'm sure you can speak to it in your patients as well, perhaps.
Well, I was diagnosed with PTSD at a very young age, and the medications that they prescribe for this condition, they have a list of may cause death, may cause organ failure, shortens your lifespan. All my fellow veterans and friends that I've seen on these medications had no life. They were just existing. They didn't have relationships with their family or none of these things. And so I discovered at a young age that cannabis made all that possible. And so I got rid of the pills, and I've been a cannabis user for mostly my whole life. And my main, I smoke. I'm not this vaping and edibles and all this type of things are more not my generation. So this Senate Bill 47 is, I'm grateful that there's something done that's going to help people, but it does nothing for me or people like me and of my generation. And I just hope that, you know, like I say, I know firsthand. I threw away the pills and depended on cannabis, and I had a quality of life. I raised a family. I've been a productive member of society, a steel worker, a union member, and all that was possible by cannabis. And that's just my opinion.
Dr. Stacy, I know you're an oncologist by profession, but can you speak to the effectiveness of cannabis in the treatment, you know, I guess if you've seen any clinical literature or anything of that nature in relation to quality of life?
Try this again. Well, I think that, certainly there are, especially from a PTSD sort of scenario there, and there are a variety of related illnesses that, without question, there's a long history of using cannabis for. And I think we're starting to do research on a variety of other hallucinogenic products for those patients too. So there's all kinds of fascinating things that can be tested, to try to clarify, because, unfortunately, all of our regular medicines, they always, unfortunately, have a long list of side effects, and they work for some people, and other people, they don't. We want as many options as possible, and if smoking cannabis works for this gentleman, then that's fine with me. Just whatever works, works. That's what it's a common discussion I have with all of my patients. Whatever works, works. We've got to figure out by trial and error what is going to work for your particular problems.
Awesome. Thank you very much. One more question for you, Mr. Sasha. How has the level and quality of care for veterans changed in states where medical cannabis is legal? I don't know if you could speak to that anecdotally with friends who live in other states, or just your experience having gone to VAs and other places.
Well, I'm a resident of Kentucky, so I want to speak about Kentucky veterans. We can lose our benefits if we test positive for THC. We can lose our benefits. We can lose our care, our medical care. And worst of all, you can put us in prison for nothing more than trying to treat our illness or whatever. I'm a firm believer in what Willie Nelson says. Stress kills most people in one way or another, and the best beneficial medicine for stress is cannabis. I truly believe that. And I want to follow up. Those pills, I told you about the side effects, but I forgot to mention the side effects of cannabis. I got a life. I love my family. I follow the Kentucky Wildcats like I have my whole life, and I'm able to function and be a productive member of society. On pills, that's not possible, and I challenge anybody that says it is.
All right. So I suppose I'll pose the same question I posed to the advisory board. So what changes from the legislature would you like to see? I mean, more broadly, I mean, you touched on it earlier, but just to reiterate, so what do you think the legislature could do to best benefit veterans then, beyond just decriminalizing? Is there anything, any other things that you think that would be appropriate to address right now?
Yes, we would love to, no matter how restrictive, the more restrictive the bill, the more people this is going to leave out. So we are going to, unfortunately, because this one is so restricted, we're going to have to continue fighting. It's not about recreational use, but we have to continue to fight for decriminalization. I think it's pretty insane that in 2023, when 3/4 of our nation's population lives in legal cannabis states and has safe legal access, that we here are still jailing people for using medicine. This is a plant. I think we have a lot of educating to do to the public in general, to our legislators. These people are making our laws for us. And, when it comes to smoking, a lot of people get hung up on smoking and say, oh, I don't want that. Well, Daniel here has fought for our freedoms. And if he can smoke and that is the fastest acting relief available to him for his PTSD, then I don't care what he does in the privacy of his own home. He's fought for our freedoms and he should have that right as far as I'm concerned. So yes, we're going to continue. We are, again, very grateful to the General Assembly for this, for finally passing something after we've been fighting for this for a decade. But our work is certainly not done. We've got a lot of educating to do, and we're very grateful also for you all being here. We can all learn and pass along this information and our perspectives, and we hope to make positive changes with it.
I don't believe in recreational cannabis use. I believe that all cannabis use is medicinal. And by saying that, I mean no matter what reason you're using it for, you're getting medicinal benefits from it. It's a plant. It's very therapeutic. You're getting therapeutic benefits from it. So I just wanted to kind of add that as well.
I would say when I took a quick look at the bill, I think one thing that, from a physician standpoint, that will be a bit of a hassle is I believe it says that I have to recertify every patient every 60 days. And so the first visit has to be an in-person visit. And that's, I mean, I prefer to see patients in the office anyway, but I guess the other visits are telehealth, I guess, is an option. But the every 60 days that's really going to add up quickly in a busy clinic. And so certainly if we're going to have a medical cannabis bill, my personal opinion would be a once a year maximum sort of thing. I don't know what other states do, but the 60 days seems a little, that's going to be an issue in my clinic, I'll say that.
I'd like to now turn to DJ. And while this question may be simplistic, I think it can also be extensive. Why do you think this took so long to get passed in the legislation?
I'm pushing it slides. Okay, so I guess this will seem like a simplistic answer, but it's just the way it is. The reason it took as long as it did because up until this year there weren't enough votes to get it. I mean, it's just that simple. I don't think there's any philosophical answer I can give you on that. It just was a matter of individuals, and I'll use myself as an example. 7 years ago, I was adamant I was never going to do anything unless the federal government did something. And over the last, I guess, 7 years now, I've reached the conclusion, one, that the federal government's not going to do anything. And two, I had individuals come to me with their stories of their suffering. I had a mom come to me whose child had suffered a traumatic brain injury. I had veterans talk to me about it. Mr. Sasha is a great example. I had story after story that convinced me that despite the fact that I believe that the federal government has a stance and they should be the one to follow through on it, I could not sit by any longer and watch these people suffer. So I made for me a major shift in thinking and belief on this issue to be able to vote for this bill. I want to be as straight as I can with you that there's a lot of things I don't like about this bill, and there's a lot of things I don't like about what marijuana does to people. And if you want to argue that with me, you can, but through personal observation, I've seen it destroy lives. I've seen it destroy marriages. I've seen people lose jobs over it because they couldn't function in their job because they were so involved with marijuana. So don't tell me it's just this great thing, because I've seen the other side of it. But at the same time, I've seen people suffering, and I've had them come to me and tell me honestly and truthfully that this was their solution, the only thing they found, and that's why I voted for this bill. And I believe there's several other legislators who have gone along the same journey with respect to this issue. And that's why, at least for me, it took me a few years to get to the point where I could even vote for this bill. Because I will say it again, I have seen the negative side of what happens when people smoke marijuana and it takes over their lives. So there's a positive, but there's a negative too. There probably ought to be somebody on this panel up here tonight to speak for the other side, frankly. But you want to know why it took so long? For me, that's why it took so long, and I don't think I'm alone in the legislatures.
Yeah, so I mean, we can To address that question too, my intention was to give. I mean, I've also heard stories like yours, but can you, Lieutenant Winkler, speak to some of the negative effects of marijuana that you've seen in our community as well? I think that's fair.
Yeah, I'll, and just like Mr. Johnson was explaining, my perspective with things have changed over time as well when it comes to this. But I've discussed at the beginning. I have a lot of friends that I served with in the Army, just like Mr. Sosh, that I know as a narcotics detective dealing with the stuff that we dealt with. Marijuana was always pretty low on the totem pole with anything that we dealt with, and I know that there are positive aspects of it. You can't 100 cannabinoids or whatever is in there. There's positive stuff that's there. Yes, there are negatives. Now, personally, I'll say with I think that society and the perimeters that we build probably contributes to that. I know that a lot of times when I would talk to parents, they would and talk to people, they would talk about marijuana being a gateway drug. Well, I think in how people try to discuss marijuana being a gateway drug is not the fact, but there is ways that marijuana is a gateway drug. And I think that that's probably induced with how we define it. I think when parents, and this is just based on interviews with addicts of all levels and of all drugs, if parents or society is telling children that marijuana and heroin and cocaine and fentanyl and methamphetamine is all drugs, it's going to kill you the first time you use it. We know I have a 26-year-old and I have 17-year-old twins. We tell them that their whole lives, and then the first time that they smoke marijuana or they use marijuana, they realize that their parents were full of it. That this wasn't that bad. This didn't do anything to me. And so then you move into, they think that we're saying the same thing about cocaine or heroin or fentanyl, and they try it, and it kind of builds that addiction. And that way, it's a gateway drug. Are there negative side effects? Yes. I'm not a doctor, and I certainly will not disagree with the doctor on anything. He's much more educated than me. But I'm a firm believer you can overdose on anything. We can overdose on oxygen. We can overdose on water, food, whatever. Tobacco, it can happen. There are safety parameters. There's negative side effects to anything that's great. But I think that's why it's important that we put thought into this, because I know I don't know how many professors I had in classes at KWC. When it comes to young people is what concerns me the most. Whether it's alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, whatever, our brains are not fully developed until we're 25 years old. Anything that impacts that as they're coming up, I'm not saying that that anything contained in cannabis could cause problems with children, but what I am saying is we need to do research and we need to put some thought into it, because there are many positive attributes to it. But I agree, there are negative aspects to it as well, and that's why I think that we have to be careful. But I don't know if I answered your question.
Can I just say something about that? One of the issues that have driven this debate for as long as it has is the lack of information there is about what is good, what is bad about marijuana. And with the federal laws being what they were, effectively it was almost a catch-22 in that because of the classification of marijuana at the federal level, they couldn't do any research on what marijuana does because of its classification, but they won't change the classification, so they can never do research. So last year, not this year, but last year, one of the bills that we passed was a funding for the University of Kentucky to start doing research on marijuana so that we can finally find out, and it won't be conclusive because it's one university doing their research, but at least it's a start so we can understand exactly what is in marijuana, what it can and can't do. That will drive what conditions we add or don't add to the list of conditions that are that meet the criteria for marijuana. So there has to be a process. We've started that process last year. It's going to be a couple years before the University of Kentucky gives us any results. But when we get that, then it will be easier for the legislators to make more informed decisions. At this point, we're kind of stepping out on faith that because of what we've been told by people with the stories that I mentioned, that there needs to be something, we're hopefully going to get some scientific evidence that will help us go in the right direction. But it's going to take a couple years for that.
Yeah, by all means, Ms. Wilk.
Go ahead.
In response to J.D. Winkler, I just want to say that my son has been seizure-free for 3.5 years. And it's because of a plant. And it would take him 40,000 joints to overdose and die. 40,000 joints. I mean, cannabis has never killed anyone. So.
All right.
I wanted to speak
no, by all means,
just
yeah.
a second, too. I wanted to speak about the gateway theory. You may find this surprising, but I, too, believe that cannabis is absolutely a gateway drug. It's a gateway to civil asset forfeiture, to unlawful search and seizure. It's a gateway to funneling people to the prisons for profit industries. It's a gateway to being able to continue to discriminate against people. I, too, have a daughter with a seizure disorder. Cannabis has saved her life. And I have to speak to this, the new cannabis, the UK Study Center. I think it's important. There's a lot of misinformation out there about this, but I think it's important to note that the director for this center who is conducting the research, she is not even qualified to write you a recommendation, frankly. They're doing a driving study that our state, your tax dollars, have spent millions to fund this study. They're doing a driving study to see whether or not my daughter, my special needs child, who will never get to drive a car, I've been told for years that's what we're waiting for. I have found that there are over 30,000 solid research studies. They're as easy to find as a quick Google search. We have over 5,000 years of documented human use, no deaths, and I think that frankly, the reason it's taken this long to pass it is because of corruption in our state.
All right. Well, respectfully, I think the biggest thing to address, because we are a nonpartisan forum, I'd again like to emphasize that. I have no dog right now. But I think that it's important to understand like legislative roadblocks and all these things as well. So do you think, Representative Johnson, what do you think is the biggest misconception that the public has about the legislative process, especially when it comes to like legislation like this where there are all these federal loopholes and things to go around? What do you think is the biggest thing that the public doesn't see that you all have to deal with?
I guess what I would just remind people is that there's 138 opinions that everyone counts. And the only way we ever pass any legislation on any subject at all is when a majority of those 100 in the House and 38 in the Senate reach, excuse me? I don't understand your question. I'm sorry. I'm going to finish my answer, though. There's 138 individuals who have to come to a consensus. This was a very controversial subject, has been for years. it just took a majority of legislators to reach a point where they could vote for a bill, just like every other issue we vote on. So if you want to know what the process is, it's that we have 138 people that we have to convince one way or another every single time we vote on a bill. I don't know if that helps or not, but that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, by all means, Ms. Wilcox, or Ms. Campbell, so I'm sorry. Yeah, please.
I'm sorry. So we live in a state where we have 138 legislators that are making decisions for us and not on behalf of us, is kind of the way I feel. I feel like a lot of you all, nothing against you, but a lot of you all go up there and you use your personal opinions and your morals to pass laws. And, I mean, are you really listening to your constituents?
Well, I voted for this bill. I voted for this bill. So, yeah, we do listen. And, you know, I'll talk to that briefly, and then we're getting way off topic, so you can bring me back in as fast as you want. But, yes, we do use our morals, and we do use our judgments, and we were elected to do that. And the good ones, and I like to think the good ones listen to the constituents, but we listen to all the constituents. And for every person in this room that is supporting whatever level of marijuana you believe in, there are a lot of people outside that disagree with you. And I represent them too. So my job is to listen to all sides, gather all the information I possibly can, and then eventually I have to make a decision. And every decision I make, somebody doesn't like. That's just a fact I have to live with. So there are probably some that their egos are stronger than their ability to listen. But I think the majority of the legislators try their best to understand issues, listen to the people, and make the best decisions they can. But we always upset somebody every single time we make a vote.
I'd like to comment that poll after poll after poll for years, the majority of Kentuckians want marijuana reform. Year after year, and we go to Frankfurt and it gets killed. So saying that that the legislators have to vote on it, there's some kind of disconnect. The majority of Kentuckians want marijuana reform today, not 2 years from now. And when you say there's no studies, people like me are your study. I've been smoking it for 40 years, and I've been a productive member of society.
I'll say it again, people like you are the reason I voted the way I voted. Okay? But it is a process. Any major issue like this is going to be a process. First, the process happened here. I know you'd like to see it faster.
Y'all have decided that it's medicine. So what are you going to tell the people 2 years with suffering? See, if someone of means of wealth, they can travel out of state and go get their medicine and come back home because they have the means and the wealth to do that. What do you tell a person that's living on SSI and getting their health care from Medicaid and living in an old folks' home? What do you tell those people? You got to wait 2 years to even be considered. That's what makes me upset.
I understand, but and the answer to that is that we're going to take it at the process that we feel that we can take it at and do it right. We're not going to make everybody happy. We're not going to make you happy. I know that. No matter what we do, it's not going to be fast enough. But we're going to do it in the process that we think is the best way to go in order to get this right, hopefully on the first try. And for some people, that's not good enough. I'm sorry, but that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that again. Thank you for being here. I know you're the only legislature here. We tried to get others, but DJ was the only one brave enough to actually come to the stage. So if we can, it did.
We actually have another.
We do. Yeah,
We have Senator Boswell here, who is not up on stage, but we welcome him and thank him for coming as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Boswell. If you get the inkling to talk, you're more than welcome to talk or ask a question here in a second. But I want to thank you all again And like I said, that offer still stands, but I want to thank you, thank all the I want to thank all the panelists for coming and bearing with us. These were some tough questions, and we tried to make them as eloquent as possible. So you have to appreciate our good college try. But I'm going to open up this Q&A. All right, we've got a lot of questions. This is, I'm sorry? Oh, not an open forum. Okay, sorry. So, all right. So actually, that was completely my fault. That was not the. Okay, very good. Well. All right, folks. All right, folks. So what I'm going to do, because there were folks that were asked to come here that were under the impression that it was not to be an open forum. That is completely my fault, and I take full responsibility for that. But for those that would like to stay and ask questions, I think that would be fair. But the panelists here have a very busy night, and some of them have to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 10 minutes. We're going to take 10 minutes, and then those panelists that would like to stay will stay, and those that have other places to be will go. Okay? Yes.
It's 7:46. If I really had planned on doing something with my wife tonight, but I'd be glad to stay around till like 8 or a little after 8 and answer a couple questions. But I don't think we need to be here till midnight to kind of answer questions. So whatever.
Okay, that is totally fair, and I'm going to direct them to students first. Okay, so Miel, here's your question.
Firstly, I want to say thank you guys for giving your time, especially you, State Representative DJ Johnson. I really respected what you had to say because it takes a lot of gumption to sort of look and sort of tackle the mob when a lot of people feel very strongly about something, and I think you're very brave for that. I think my question is just like, where do we draw the line on marijuana usage? Like, I don't necessarily know. And this question would be directed towards the Kentucky Moms for Medical Cannabis. Where do you guys draw the line? Because at least personally for me, I don't know how safe it is to completely open the floodgates. And I know you guys are very pro, and I think, I've listened to the pros that you guys have. But is there a sort of line, like you're fighting till you get to where, is sort of what I would like to know.
We're for medical cannabis. We both agree that all cannabis use can be therapeutic. However, that don't mean that we just want to pass it out in trick-or-treat buckets either. But we must continue to fight for decriminalization for medical patients who wouldn't have access even under a bill as restrictive as this. We have outlined some priorities that we want to continue to fight for this next legislative session, and we'll go from there. But as long as we draw the line when patients stop coming to us and bawling their eyes out, telling us their stories and their struggles, we're going to continue to fight for every single one of them.
Any more students? It doesn't look like we have any more.
Quick question on just legalizing. We got alcohol that's legal, and I understand, the negatives of what you're talking, it destroys family, but alcohol is legal. It destroys family. Smoking is legal, and it gets overdone, and believe it or not, it destroys family. I understand that. I've seen it myself. But when you have a person that has a medical condition and going to the doctor and they wind up taking 20 pills a day, and you have to take off work to go find them wandering in the neighborhood, quits that and starts cannabis, and actually works. Now, she's on the governor's list, but when the bill comes out, then she's off the list. Talking about legalizing, you said it takes time. These studies that I'm sure other states that are legal have studies. Why can't our state look at their studies?
Very short answer is because there are studies that say just the opposite. And we have to try to understand all of the perspectives. And again, that's why it takes as long as it does, because we can't just say, well, this side study is the one I'm going to agree with and ignore the other one. We have to look at both of them. And there are studies on both sides. So we just have to weigh the information we get to the very best of our ability. And we're human beings. We'll do the best we can. We won't be perfect. And part of the bill includes an automatic review of what conditions will be on the list. So, and I'm sure that list is going to grow. Again, not as fast as some people want, but think about the fact that we actually legalized medical marijuana in Kentucky. That's a big deal. It really is.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for participating in this tonight. Dwayne Johnson and I went to high school together at Apollo. I have Tourette's. He probably knows the torture I went through the 6 years there. I applaud you for doing what you've done, but I think we can do more. And I don't think we need a consensus for individual health care.
I'm not sure if I need the microphone, but I just had a quick question for Lieutenant Colonel Winkler here, sir. I just wanted a quick yes or no. Has prohibition of anything ever made your job easier?
Sir, you know it's impossible for me to answer anything with just a yes or no, but it's the reality is I don't care what it is that you talk about. As free as our country is, it's impossible to outlaw anything. I do want to go back to this gentleman's question, because he brought up, discussing alcohol, and I think that's actually a great point, because we do regulate to an extent alcohol. I will, and I'll finish with this, because I know you said yes or no, but take it from somebody. I got my college education later in life. I was actually a narcotics detective when I got my education, and you would not believe the way that my professor dressed me down when I gave a presentation to my fellow students about my beliefs about decriminalization of marijuana, or how I saw things. Now, with that said, I also know the negative aspects of it, and that's where I think Mr. Johnson and what they're doing, putting thought into this stuff, it needs to be, it has benefits, but we also have to be careful to make sure that we don't open that, so we're not handing it out like like it's Halloween candy. We have to think about and put some thought into it. Other states have made some mistakes. We need to learn from those mistakes, and I think that it's important that we do it right, because it is a benefit. We need to make sure that we don't undermine any of that and cause any trouble through that. So I know that wasn't your yes or no question, but you're right. I don't care what it is. It's prohibition in general is not going to work.
Boy, I'm going to hit a really fine point here, so somebody's going to not be happy with what I say probably, but alcohol and cigarettes are not prohibited. They're regulated. Medical marijuana is not prohibited now. It's regulated. There's a difference.
I just want to say I agree with everything every one of y'all have said tonight. So there is unity here, and there's a lot of free thinking, which is awesome. I could write a book on marijuana. I smoked a lot of it. I haven't in a long time, and especially, but I do want to ask the the two whose children, are they, and you can answer after because I got a couple things. Do they do gummies, or how do they get the THC into their system?
Mine takes an oil. It's an oil. It's put. She takes it like any other liquid medication. She takes it morning and night.
Okay.
We started in 2016 through a clinical trial through the University of Louisville, and it's changed her life. It's saved
awesome.
her life.
That's awesome.
My son started out on oil, and he smokes now. It's better for him, faster acting, works immediately, and has, like I said, kept the seizures away for 3.5 years. So.
Well, I think that the state should stay, and I think you should just be able to grow it at your house. I mean, but the federal government does not need to get involved with it. It'll get corrupt. They're big pharmaceutical people, and it'll get corrupted. So, but to say that you can't OD on it, I was in Denver when they legalized it, the weekend they legalized it. And a friend of mine who suffers from anxiety, paranoid schizophrenia, he ate a chocolate one, and we had to rush him to the hospital. His heart rate was out of this world. And so if the doctor said if we hadn't have gotten him there, he'd have had a heart attack. So, and I'm not judging. I wore the eraser out of my pencil a long time ago. But I do believe you can do that. And please, it cannot get recreational. I've been in Denver, Portland, Seattle. I've been all across the United States. When they open the dispensaries up, you're in big trouble when they do that. It'll ruin your city. I think you should be able to grow it at your house if you want to smoke it and do those kinds of things. And that's all I got to say. I agree with almost everything everybody had to say. This has been a really cool forum.
Just on the side of safety, I want to make it clear that there absolutely are drug interactions that can happen. We fully believe that anybody that uses cannabis should do it under the supervision of their physician. These drug interactions they're very well known. They're documented online. You can talk to pharmacists about it, especially the newer graduating classes of pharmacists are being taught thoroughly about some of these issues. We've had some minor instances with my daughter's use and how it interacts with her other medications. But yes, it's like the liver enzymes. She's had elevated liver enzymes. We do regular lab work. But yes, we are not here to just say, oh yes, it's perfectly fine and perfectly safe and you can't overdose. We know that there are side effects. We know that there are interactions. We are well aware of cannabis hyperemesis disorder, and we are only promoting, or I promote medical use under the supervision of a physician. So I just want to make that clear.
All right. Thank you again.
So I think when we use the word overdose in a medical term, it's very different than in the public understanding of what we mean by overdose. Overdose for physicians means a significant dose to shut down your respiratory system and you smother to death. That is not something that cannabis does. So it's one of those things where there are significant, potentially severe adverse reactions that, and you described one there. But very technically, when we're talking about overdoses, we're talking about a very specific medical scenario, and that is not a... Well, but the idea is that, cannabis is a product that has a variety of cannabinoids in it, including THC, CBD, a variety of things. And so the issue is, one issue with people who aren't used to using cannabis is that when you use the edible versions, the metabolism is very different than if you're smoking or vaping cannabis. Probably the worst way to intake cannabis is by the GI system. And so what commonly happens is people will try edibles for the first time. It's 2 hours later. It hasn't hit me yet. I'll take some more. Next thing, they're in the ER, chest pain, elevated heart rate, a variety of symptoms. Again, those are adverse effects of massive doses. But that's more of an intoxication effect. It's not what we as physicians technically refer to as overdose.
Thank you again for the panelists. Everybody give them a round of applause. Belinda Abel, Mary Danhauer, and Julie Campbell for their assistance in getting the panelists tonight. I would also like to thank Anna Crasher as well. Respect of the time to head out if they would like, and if anybody would like to questions, you all are allowed to do that. Thank you so much.